people?
No, they can hear everything.
They hear everything.
Oh, that's good. I've not done Zoom live on YouTube before, so I feel like I should ask.
Yeah. So it's like live on the website, live on YouTube, and anybody who's watching can go to the World Storytelling Cafe website on the cafe page, and if you have Zoom, join in the room, as it were, with one click. And this would be a great time to do that if you're watching.
Yes, come and join us. I'm going to start in like 30 seconds. Liz is here. Hi, Liz.
Liz.
I always say that and hope people are named for like the actual thing or not on someone else's iPad. I've done that before. It's like, and normally people do it to my kid as well. So like he'll go on as Justine, and I'm like, no, that's not my name. Lovely. Okay, I think we'll probably start then, and then if anyone else wants to join, they can. Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to Stories of Otherness. So that's what my set is called today. And I thought I'd call it that because I wanted to do stories that celebrated and resonated with me as an autistic woman and as an autistic person. I was quite pleased when I looked at my set today, and it has stories of women and men and boys and girls, so all across the age range. And I suppose I found that more and more with my storytelling, I'm kind of wanting to express my experience of being autistic through my creative work. And no better place to do that. I'm going to start off with what I call extreme storytelling. Extreme storytelling is basically when I make up a story on the spot from your suggestions. So I'm so pleased there's people here, because otherwise it'd be really hard to do without. So guys, if you're watching on YouTube and you want to be involved in this story, click on the Zoom link now and come in. And the reason I say that this is kind of really fun as an autist is because the autistic brain, once you kind of say one word, my brain wonderfully produces everything I've ever known about that in front of me, which means that extreme storytelling, when I have to make up a story just from your suggestions, is quite easy for an autist. If you ever see someone who's not autistic doing this, be really impressed, because it's really, really hard if you don't have a brain that does it anyway. I should also say as well that sometimes the autistic brain is like having lots of computer screens open at the same time, and just like a computer screen, sometimes it freezes and won't do anything. So far that has never happened during extreme storytelling, but who knows, today might be the day. So we're going to kick off with a bit of that, and then I've got some stories for you and a brand new story that I'm going to premiere at the end, and there'll be time for a bit of chat afterwards. I'm also just going to do my duty and plug in the chat. Can everybody see the chat? Just raise your hand if you can see the chat. There we go. Lovely. So I've just put my link to my page. If you are enjoying this evening, then please go on there. You'll see a little hat sign, and you can chuck some money in my hat, which would be much appreciated. Shane joining right on time. Bless him. Okay, let us kick off. So, extreme storytelling, I need 3 facts before I start. So I need one of you. You can either shout out a suggestion or you can chuck it in the chat. Who would you like this story to be about? It can be about anyone you want. It can be about a person, an animal, a thing. Give me a suggestion as to who you would like it to be about. Who's going to be the hero of our story?
Bobby Robson.
Bobby Robson. Hence the football chat. All right. So this is the story of Bobby Robson, the famous Ipswich, England, God knows what else, footballer, manager, and all that jazz. Okay. The next thing we need to decide for our story is, what does Bobby Robson want more than anything in the world?
Ice cream.
Ice cream, of course he does. Love it. And the last thing we need to decide before we start is, who's going to try and stop Bobby Robson getting his ice cream? Who would you like to be the bad guy, the villain in this story?
Ferguson.
Ferguson. Good grief. Going to push my football knowledge to the limit. You know what? I'm just giving the names. Now, basically what happens is I start the story when I need a suggestion. I'm going to ask you guys. You can shout it out or you can stick it in the chat. Just let me know. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on both. Here we go. Once upon a time, Bobby Robson, he woke up in his little flat in Ipswich. In my head, that's where he lived. And he woke up in his little flat in Ipswich and he thought, you know, it's a hot day. The sunshine was coming into the window. He thought, really, really fancy an ice cream. So he thought, I know, and he went downstairs from his little flat. In my head, he lives in one of those big tower blocks. He went down the stairs from his little flat and he went out onto the streets of Ipswich and he looked around. And he couldn't see any ice cream vans anywhere. He thought, you know what? I don't know where I'm going to find any ice cream. There's not an ice cream van on the street. Ladies and gentlemen, if you were Bobby Robson and you were looking for ice cream in Ipswich, where would you look first?
Upper Orwell Street.
Upper Orwell Street. For those of you looking from around the world, you're going to get like in-depth knowledge into Ipswich, right? So he went along to Upper Orwell Street and he looked along the shops and he saw the record shop and he saw the clothes shop and he saw little corner shop. If I pop into the corner shop, I might be able to get myself an ice cream there. So he went into the corner shop. The door opened. Now, when you open a corner shop door, it always opens with like a little ring of a bell. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you do me a ding-a-ling for the opening of the corner shop door? Here we go.
Ding-a-ling.
That was beautiful. I moved to tears. And he went up to the corner shop and he said, I would like one of your finest cornettos. That is the ice cream that I fancy today. And the corner shopman said, I'm really sorry, but that bloke Ferguson, he's been in here and he's brought all of the cornettos. But I said, no, I really need a cornetto. Have you not got a choc ice? Corner shopman said, no. He said, have you not got even like a lemonade spark? I said, no. He's taken all of our iced goods and I don't know where he's taken them to. Well, Bobby Robson was very upset. He thought, if I was Ferguson and I wanted to take, and I stole all of the ice goods, where on earth would I take them, ladies and gentlemen? Where is our evil villain Ferguson going to have taken all of those iced goods?
To Norwich City Football Club.
To Norwich City Football Club. Oh my God. Wow. Bobby Robson. For those of you that don't know, Ipswich and Norwich, big football rivals. Makes a lot more sense. Think of local derby thing. So, Bobby Robson said, I know, he'll have taken them to the worst place, the place I never want to go, the place I'm going to have to cross the border of Norfolk and Suffolk to get to. He is going to have taken the iced goods to Norwich City Football Club. So Bobby Robson looked around and he thought, well, how am I going to get from Ipswich to Norwich? Now, if you need to get from Ipswich to Norwich, what form of transport would you choose, ladies and gentlemen?
Flying carpet.
What was that, Liz?
Flying carpet.
A flying carpet. He thought the quickest way of getting there was a flying carpet. Now, fortunately, on Upper Orwell Street, there is a carpet shop. He popped in. He said, I'll have one of your finest flying carpets, please. And the man gave him his flying carpet, and he sat upon the flying carpet. Hang on. Does anyone know the magic word to start the flying carpet? Anyone? Pick one.
Alakazam.
Alakazam. Thank you. Liz, you're our flying carpet expert now. He said, Alakazam, and sure enough, the flying carpet rose up and up and up, and whoosh! It went all the way from Ipswich, it went all the way down the Orwell, it went up over the coast, it went past Lowestoft, it went to Yarmouth, it crossed into Norfolk, and it came back down again, and there it floated over Norwich City Football Club, and he thought, well, this is as good a place as any. And he said, down, carpet, and the carpet went down and down and down and down and down and down and down until it landed right on the centre spot of the pitch. He thought, right, Ferguson, I'm going to find where you have these iced goods. Now, if you were Ferguson and you hid the iced goods somewhere in Norwich City Football Club, I'm testing your football knowledge here, guys. Whereabouts in Norwich City Football Club would you leave those iced goods?
Well, I'd put it in the men's lockers, in the players' lockers, with all the sweaty stuff.
Oh, no. Fortunately, there was a groundsman nearby, and Bobby Robson said to him, I'm looking for some iced goods. The groundsman said, you know the men's lockers, there's this strange smell. It's kind of like sweat and cheesy feet, and then a bit of like, sweet milk and sugar on. He said, all right, then I'm going to go and
described John's caravan.
Pretty much John's caravan. Bobby Robson said, no. I've been in John's caravan. Groundsman said, no. I'm in the men's locker. So he went down the tunnel and he found the men's locker room. And there were hundreds of lockers. He thought, how am I going to know which one it is? And he went up and he started sniffing the lockers. This is a strange story. So he sniffed the first locker. No, that was definitely just cheese and sweat. Next locker. No, it's still definitely just, he thought, this is never going to work. I need to find out which one it is. Now, if you were stuck in the men's locker room in Norwich City Football Changing Club and you were looking for iced goods that were stuck inside a locker, who would you ask for help?
Delia.
Who?
Delia Smith.
Who?
Delia Smith.
Delia Smith. What I know, I need to get Delia Smith on the blower. She is the expert with both food and Norwich City Football Club. So we phoned up Delia Smith. He said, Delia, that Ferguson has hidden some iced goods in the men's locker with all the sweaty feet and oh my God, it's disgusting. Anyway, tell me, how am I going to tell which locker has got all the ice cream in it? I really need some ice cream. I've come all the way from Ipswich on a magic carpet and I just need to get some ice cream. I'm sweating myself now. Delia said, oh. The way that you can tell where there is ice cream inside a locker is you tap on it. You tap on it 3 times like this. And if you hear, that will be the sound of the milk responding. So he went along and he started tapping. And he tapped on one locker, no sound. He tapped on another locker, no sound. He tapped and tapped and tapped, and then suddenly, he said, this is the locker I need to get in here. And he found a crowbar, because apparently there's always crowbars in men's locker rooms. He took a crowbar and he was just about to open the men's locker room when Ferguson himself appeared and stood in front of him and said, Bobby Robson, you shall not have ice cream today. I shall win in all things and you shall lose. Bobby Robson went, oh no, I really need to get some ice cream. So if you were Bobby Robson, you needed to get past. You need to get past Ferguson to get to your ice cream. How are we going to get past him, ladies and gentlemen? What are we going to try?
He's going to transform into an ant.
I know. I will transform into an ant. And he said the magic word, which as Liz told us is alakazam. And then as soon as he said alakazam, there was suddenly a fizzle and a sparkling. And Bobby Robson became smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. He was just the size of a tiny ant. And he started trying to walk past, and he went, this is never going to work. He's either going to tread on me or I'm going to take 3 years to climb up the side of the locker. He thought, oh no, I need to try something else. I need to try something else. What could he try next, ladies and gentlemen? Any ideas? Pick a transformation.
Now, to a flying cockroach.
He thought, I know. I need to be a flying insect, not a tiny insect. So from being this tiny ant, he said, alakazam, because he was very small, he couldn't talk like that. Alakazam! And he turned, and he got bigger and bigger and bigger until he was a flying cockroach this side. And he started flapping like this all around Ferguson's head. And then Ferguson was swatting him and swatting him and swatting him, and he realised, even if I'm a flying cockroach, I can get past Ferguson, but I can't get into the actual locker. I thought, one more try. One more thing that's going to get me past Ferguson and get the ice cream I need so I can get back to Ipswich and sit in my flat and enjoy it. What is the last thing we are going to try, ladies and gentlemen?
Crowbar.
Crowbar. You already had a crowbar.
Houdini.
Pay attention. He thought, I know. I will remain a flying cockroach and perhaps if I was a flying cockroach and a crowbar. So he took the crowbar. He said, alakazam! And the crowbar turned to flying cockroach side. And with his tiny little flying cockroach, they have claws, don't they? Kind of like a crab. Anyway, his tiny crowbar. And he managed to fly past Ferguson and he managed to prise open the locker. And before Ferguson could do anything about it, he was inside. And there were all the cornettos and the choc ices and even the lemonade sparkles and the Calippos. This is amazing! Then he realised it was a cockroach. And there was no way he was going to get this stuff home. Ladies and gentlemen, what's he going to do to get this stuff home and get past Ferguson?
Put it on the magic carpet.
He said, right, this calls for magic again. And he raised his little wings high and he said, alakazam! And sure enough, as soon as he said it, he and all the ice cream and the cornettos and whatever other ice goods he had, all transported from inside the men's locker room onto the flying carpet. And Ferguson came running out after and said, bring back those things! But it was too late. He said, alakazam again! And the carpet rose up. It rose up off that centre spot, and it flew, and it went by the Great Yarmouth, back down by our Lowestoft, back down along, and back in along the Orwell to Ipswich. And he landed on the roof of his block of flats. And he said, alakazam, and he made himself one of those nice cool boxes. And he put all of the ice cream and the Calippos and the choc ices inside it. He took his cool box. He turned himself back into a person. I don't think cockroaches could eat that much. He said, alakazam, turned himself back into a person. He took his cool box and he went down to his flat. And he opened the little window and he sat on his balcony enjoying his cornetto. And Bobby Watson, with his ice cream, lived happily ever after.
Yay!
Thank you. That locally themed story. Awesome work, guys. There were days when I wondered about my job when I'm doing flying cockroaches with tiny little cockroach-sized crowbar. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to start with a story that I'm going to start the stories that I prepared to tell with a story that I think some of you will know. This is a story that I tell a lot. It's a story called Skeleton Woman. And Skeleton Woman is a story that most people know from the book Women Who Run with Wolves, which is by a woman whose name I can never properly pronounce. Can anyone pronounce her name? Clarissa, it's the surname I can't do.
Estes something.
Yeah. But look up Women Who Run with the Wolves. Now, Skeleton Woman was a really interesting story because in the book, she claims there was something that was collected from an Inuit woman. And there is some controversy because it's quite hard to find other kind of versions of it that have been collected from elsewhere. So it could be that it is an amazing oral story that was collected. There are some I think unkind people who say that it's something that she made up, but I kind of don't mind which it is. Because either way, it's an amazing story, and it's either a traditional story passed down, or it's one made up by a very mischievous woman, and I kind of like that too. So I'm going to stand up for this one and hope you can still hear me. It goes like this. In the lands of the winter, in the far north, where there is much more night than there is day, a father took his daughter to the cliff top. And she was biting and screaming and kicking and swearing, but to no avail. He took her to the edge, he threw her over, and he walked away. And she fell down and down and down and down and down over the rocks until she hit the water. And there she continued her journey, down and down and down and down and down until she hit the seabed. And there she lay, tossed and turned by the currents and the tides, until the creatures of the deep started to take an interest in her. The fish came along and nibbled at her extremities. The eels came and pulled at the flesh. The crustaceans came and picked clean the bones. And the sea slugs sucked out her eyeballs. And there she lay, Skeleton Woman. Now, the people of that land were the hunters. Even those that didn't know the story, they would never fish in that bay again. Something about it spooked them. And so it lay quiet for many months. Until one day, a hunter from far-off lands came. And he took his little kayak and he paddled it up. And he couldn't believe. Here was this beautiful bay teeming in fish and no one was there. He thought, this is it. I'm going to make my fortune here. And he paddled his little kayak right up to the center of this bay. And he took out his line and his rod and he let the line down into the water. And it just so happened that he had put his kayak above where Skeleton Woman lay. And she lay. And she watched the hook coming down and down and down, and she began to panic. She had no desire to go back up to the world of men. It had not treated her well before, but there was nothing she could do. It came down and down and down until it hooked under her breastbone. And she began to struggle. She began to pull. And as the fisherman felt that struggle and felt the weight on the line, he thought, well, this is a big fish. I might just be able to sit on my backside for an entire week off the flesh of this one. And so he wound her in more and more and more. And the more she started coming from the bottom of the floor, the more she struggled, the more the bones became tangled in the line. She found her foot was inside her pelvis, her elbow stuck in her rib cage. And the more she struggled, the more tangled she became, and the more it pulled on the line, and the more the fisherman thought, this is a big fish. This is not just going to feed me. This could feed the whole village. The children will be impressed. The men will be impressed. But most importantly, the women will be impressed. And so he reeled her in, and he reeled her in, and he reeled her in, and he reeled her in. And then, just as all good fishermen do, before his catch broke the surface, he turned away to get his net. So we didn't see her bony skull come over the end of the boat and one long tooth hook in the prow. So when he turned round, ah! He took his oar and he smacked her off, and she fell back into the water, and he started paddling as fast as he could this way and that way. He was zigging this way and that way. She was like behind him, as if like she was some kind of water skiing skeleton. And he got faster and faster and faster. It looked for all the world as if she was trying to bring him back down to the depths with her. Finally, with her still tagging along behind, he got to his fishing grounds. And he pulled his kayak up along the beach, and he ran, and he ran, and she was bumping along behind him, still tangled in the line. Grabbed a dried fish on the way. It's been a long time since the girl had eaten. And he ran, and he ran, and he ran, until he was deep inside the igloo, and he pulled up his things behind him, and he sat there in the dark, thanking the gods, thanking Sedna, thanking anyone he could think of, that he had been saved from a fate worse than death. Well, he sat there, and he felt around in the dark for his whale oil lamp. And when he found it, he took a flint and a little bit of his hair, and he put it in the oil lamp and made a spark. And the oil lamp began to glow. And as the light filled the igloo, he looked across, and because there she was, all wound up in the fishing line that he'd pulled in behind her, just stuck like this. He shot over to his side of the igloo. And they stood, sat, staring at one another. No one knows quite what happened then. Maybe something in the lamplight softened her features, maybe a wave of compassion, but slowly and carefully, he made his way back across the igloo towards her. And he took the line, and he began untangling it, releasing each of those bones as he went, and laying them down on the igloo floor, just as a human being should be. When he'd finished his task, he sat the other side of the oil lamp, rewinding that line as she lay there. He covered her over in a sealskin, sorted his fishing things, and eventually tiredness overcame him. And he went back to his side of the igloo, and he pulled up the covers, and he fell asleep. Now all this time, Skeleton Woman had made no move. She was fearful that if she did anything, he would take her bones and smash them on the rocks, and then she would be gone forever. But once he was sleeping, she couldn't resist watching. And she looked across at him. And who knows what he was dreaming of, but a tear escaped from his eye. And when she saw the tear, she could not resist. She hauled herself up on those bony elbows and made her way across the igloo. And she lay over him, and she drank the tear. And it slaked a thirst in her she had long since forgotten. As she lay over him, she could hear his heart beating, boom, boom. And she couldn't resist. She took her bony hand, slipped it inside his chest, and pulled out that heart, and began to beat it like a drum. Boom, boom. And as she played, she began to sing. Hi-ya, 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 hi-ya. She sang the flesh back to her bones. Hi-ya, 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 hi-ya. She sang for muscle and sinew and strength. Hi-ya, 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 hi-ya. She sang for long dark hair and deep olive skin. Hi-ya, 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 hi-ya. And when she had sung herself back to life, she took that heart very carefully and placed it back inside the fisherman's ribcage. She healed over the wound and lay down next to him, wrapping herself around him, tangled now as they had been together in the line. The people say that they woke up the next morning and they went away together, and they were nourished in their time by the creatures that she had known from the deep. That's what the people say, and that's all I know. So there ends my tale. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I always think with Skeleton Woman, I think kind of why it feels to me like that's an autistic story is because there's a big question at the start. What did she do that her father threw her over a cliff, you know? And I love that that's never answered, you know. But the fact also that she has this kind of power to sing herself back to life. So that's one of my favorites. So I'm going to tell a story that's local to me now. Yeah, so this is the Wild Man of Watford. Some of you may have heard it before. And it's a story that is kind of in fragments. There's an old ballad, and there's little bits kind of written down about 100 years after the events were meant to have happened. So it's always a kind of great one to do as a storyteller because you get to kind of pick all the different bits and bring it back together. And the interesting thing about Wild Man is the Wild Man is a character who, as you'll see, doesn't speak. And there have been lots of theories about who he was, if he really existed, as there was with good stories. But one of the reasons that I kind of think that he is an autist, like a non-verbal autist, I have non-verbal autists in my family, is that they talk about the way he moves and his swimming in the sea. I have a friend who has her son, who's in his 20s now, loves swimming in the sea and loves swimming like naked in the sea. And I just feel like this feels like him. So kind of when I tell it for him and for all kind of non-verbal autists. If you're sitting comfortably. I'm also going to say that this does involve a little bit of my Suffolk accent. I should say when I was a kid I did have a Suffolk accent. I have lost it. Sometimes it gets a bit dodgy when I go back. And there are some Suffolk boys in the house, so I'm apologising up front. Okay? If I drift over the border to Norfolk, it's not intentional, okay? Here we go. Some 850 years ago, in the year 1167, old Bill stood at the end of the quay in Watford, and he looked out to sea, and he saw the mist on the water. He said, "That's a rum old morning out there." And the other fishermen waiting to get in their boat said, "Bill, come on, give it up, get in your boat." Well, Bill walked away from the edge of the quay, he got into his boat, and all the little fishing boats, they went out, past the spit at Orford Ness, out into the fishing grounds. And they all began to put out their nets. Bill's boat was the last. And the boy that was in charge of casting the net, he took the net. You can join in with this if you like. He took the net and he swung it round his head 3 times. I'm watching to see if you join in. He swung it round. 1, 2, 3. And he threw the net out to sea. And the fishermen waited. They waited the allotted time that fishermen know. And then they hauled the net back in. You can haul it back in with me. He hauled it and he hauled it and he hauled it and he hauled it, and they opened the net into the bottom of the boat, and there was a few fish. But Bill looked at his fisherman, he said, "That ain't enough, send it out again." So he took the net, threw it round his head, here we go. 1, 2, 3, threw it out to sea, waited for it to sink below the water, and they sat and waited their allotted amount of time, and they hauled it back in, here we go. They hauled and 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 they let the net go. And sure enough, there were a few more fish in the bottom of the boat. Bill said, "That ain't enough, do it again." So for the 3rd time, they took the net and they threw it around their heads. 1, 2, 3, threw it out to sea, watched it sink below the water, waited the allotted time. And then the boy in charge of hauling it back in started to haul. And he started to haul. He said, "Bill, that's a bit full this time. We're going to need some more help." So all the men on the boat started hauling and hauling and hauling and hauling and hauling until finally they managed to get it aboard. And then they let the net go. And as the fish parted to a man, they said, "What a blooming X that!" Pretty much like the people in the last story. Because there, in the bottom of the boat, amongst all the fish, there was a man. The man was completely bald on the top of his head and a beard that went down to his toes. And he just lay in the bottom of the boat, staring up at them. And all the fishermen looked down at the man, and then they looked at Bill. And Bill looked at the fisherman, and he looked at the man, and he said, "Well, if that's what we caught, that's what we better take home then." That's exactly what they did. They covered him up in a sailcloth. They hoisted their sails and they went back to the quay at Watford. They were the last boat in, and all the villagers were gathered along the quayside, looking to see what catch had been brought in. And they saw old Bill's boat coming in and said, "Bill, what are you hiding your catch for, boy?" He said, "You'll see." And so when Bill's boat finally came to the quayside, all of the villagers looked over. And as they looked over the side, Bill pulled back the sailcloth. And to a man, the entire village went, "What the blooming heck's that?" Because he was still there, just looking up at them all. Someone helped the man to his feet. Someone helped him step over the side of the boat and onto the quayside. And they noticed there, when he walked, it was like a shuffle, like he couldn't quite take his feet off the ground. And the villagers, they made a circle around him. One of them called out, "What's your name then?" But the man just stared at them. Another called out, "Where'd you come from?" Still, he just stared. Another villager said, "Maybe he's hungry." And one of the fishermen happened to have a fish in his hand at the time. And so he threw it towards the man. And the man reached up, caught it out of the air, took both hands and he squeezed it until all the juices fell onto the quayside, and then when there was just flesh and bone, he ate it in one gulp. The villagers had never seen anything like this before. He said, "Well, that's a bit weird, isn't it, Bill? What are we going to do about that then?" Bill said, "Well, he was caught on the governor's land, so we better take him up the castle to see the governor." So that's what they did. A strange procession made it from Watford Quay across the marshes, across the fields, until they reached the castle wall. And when they got to the castle wall, with the wild man in front of them and the villagers around, they knocked on the great oak door. If you have something to knock on, now is the time to knock on it. And the door opened with a creak. Ladies and gentlemen, give me a creak. Beautiful sound. And there stood a guard. He went, "Yeah, what do you want?" Bill said, "Well, we found this here wild sort of man, and he was in the water when we fishing, and we thought we'd better bring him to the governor." Guard said, "Right, better follow me then." So they followed the guard from the castle wall up to the great keep at Watford Castle, and they all went up. If you go there to this day, there were a steep set of stairs up to the door, and they all, single file, went up, the wild man going first. And when they got to that door, you know what they did? They knocked on the door. The door opened with yet another creak. Here we go. And there was another guard who went, "Yeah, what do you want?" He was a sailor. He said, we bought this man, what we picked up, we found him in the sea, and we thought the governor should see him." The guard went, "Wait there." He went into the great round room at Watford Castle. It's still there, you can go and see it. And there, sat upon a throne-like chair on the other side of the round room, was Bartholomew de Glanville. Now, Bartholomew de Glanville, he had been given the task of looking after that castle for King Henry. King Henry had sent him from court and said, "You must look after this land and my people and my castle." And it was kind of a bit tough for de Glanville. He was used to court, he was used to London, he was used to all the wonderful things that brought, and he was bored. And when the guard came in that day and said, Villagers are here, and they've got this wild man they want to show you. De Glanville was delighted. Oh my goodness, that is wonderful! I'm so excited. Visitors, love it. Bring them in. And of course, they all shuffled in. The wild man shuffling more than most, and he stood in the middle of that great room, and the villagers all around the outside. And De Glanville looked at the man, and the man just stared back. He said, "Tell me, who are you?" The man just stared. All right, where do you come from? Who are your people? But the man just stared. De Glanville looked around the village and said, does he do anything? Now someone had fortunately brought a fish with them, and they threw the fish high in the air. And the wild man reached up, took it, squeezed all of the juices out until there was just flesh and bone, and ate it in one gulp. De Glanville looked at him and said, "That is marvelous! What a wonderful chick! Oh, you are just a treat. You really are. Thank you so much, peasants, for bringing him. I think I'll keep him. Off you go now." So the villagers, not knowing what else to do, they filed out of that great room, leaving De Glanville and the wild man alone. Well, De Glanville wasted no time. He showed the wild man the whole of the castle. He took him down to the bottom of the castle where all the cooking was done. He took him up to the top of the castle where you could see out to sea where the man had come from. He even had a fine couch made for the wild man to sleep on. He said to him, "I am so glad of the company, and you're so much more interesting than anybody else I've met here. Please stay, help yourself, do whatever you want." And for a while, De Glanville was happy. He had some company. And the wild man seemed happy. He would shuffle around the castle. He would go up onto the top of the castle where he could see the sea. He would go down to the bottom of the castle where he'd help himself to whatever food that he wanted. And he would sleep at night on that comfortable couch. But the people that weren't happy were the servants. And they started to talk. And one night they were down at the tavern and they said, well, it was the cleaning. It was the cleaner, the maid. He said, "You know what? I know that De Glanville likes him, but to be honest, his lordship should get rid of him, because you know what? I was cleaning the floor, and he comes along and he starts shuffling around. He knocks over my bucket, and then he's splashing in that water. I had to clean it all over again. It was terrible." And then the cook said, "Oh, do you know what? It's terrible for me as well. I was there cooking a lovely bit of meat for his lordship's supper. Do you know what? He comes in before I've even put it in the oven, absolutely raw, takes a bit of meat, squeezes all the juices out. There's nothing left but bone, eats it all in one gulp. I had to start all over again." And then the guard says, "Well, if you think about it, that ain't right, is it? I mean, if he can't speak, and we don't know where he come from, it means he can't say his prayers. And if he can't say his prayers, well, then he must be the devil's work, and we should cast him out. And it only takes a tiny little seed of doubt and hate, and it always finds fertile ground." And it wasn't long before the rumour spread around the servants, but they knew they could do nothing when De Glanville was there, because the wild man was under his protection, so they waited. They waited until De Glanville went back to London. And as soon as he was gone, and the wild man was asleep on his couch, they came as a mob. And they dragged him from his couch, and they tied him to a chair, and they started to beat him. They said, "Say your name." And the wild man just looked at them. He said, "You are not of God's creature. Say your prayers so that we know you are one of God's creatures." And the wild man just looked at them. "Tell us who you are." But still, he just looked at them. And they beat him, and they beat him, and they tortured him, and they asked his questions, but still he wouldn't reply. All night this went on, until in the early hours they took him and they threw him into the dungeon. If you go to Watford Castle to this day, you will see there is a very small room when you come in, and in that is a trapdoor, and below that is where the dungeon is, barely enough room for one human being. They left him in there for many hours, and then the next day they took him out again. They took him out of the castle and they tied him to a tree, and once again they began beating him, demanding that he say his name, that he say his prayers, that he denounce Satan. And this is what they were doing when de Glanville arrived back from London. And from his horse he said, "What on earth are you doing? Untie him, leave the man alone." And the servant said, well, I'm sorry, your lordship, but he don't say his prayers, and we don't think he's one of God's people, and we don't think he should be in the king's castle. And the guy said, "Oh, just don't be ridiculous. I understand your concerns, and I tell you what we'll do. Tomorrow he will come to church with me, and you will see that he's just as holy as the rest of you. Now get him down from there." The servants reluctantly untied him. He was carried back to his couch where he was allowed to rest. The next morning, it was Sunday. And so, with all of de Glanville's party, the wild man was taken through the streets of Watford to the church. And like everybody else, walked down the aisle and shuffled into one of the pews and sat down with de Glanville's men either side of him. And they all awaited the preacher. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are some fine preachers in this land. There were probably even some fine preachers at that time, but this particular preacher was not. He was more dull than you can possibly ever imagine. And when he took the pulpit and he began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered this fine Sunday." That's as much as the wild man heard. Because unlike everybody else who knew they had to sit there in their Sunday best, the wild man knew nothing of this. And because it was dull, he stood up, he shuffled out, and he left the church. Well, at that point, de Glanville knew that he couldn't protect him. He had to take notice of the servants. He said, "All right, then, this is what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen. What we will do is we will build, I will get those fishermen that found him to build a lovely net and put it in the moat, and then the man can be in the moat, and then he won't be in the castle, so he won't bother you anymore." The servants weren't happy, but they made do. So the fishermen were called, and they sewed their nets together to make a fine, large enclosure that was sunk into the moat of the castle. And the next day, the wild man was taken down and put into the water. And the villagers stood around, and de Glanville waited, and the servants stood. And as they watched him go underneath the surface of the water and come up again, and splash and play. Everyone got a little bored after a while. De Glanville said, "Well, you seem to be happy, so I will pop down and see you later. Toodaloo." And everyone slowly drifted away, and as soon as they had, the wild man disappeared under the water. And somehow, through those strong nets, he escaped. Somehow from that moat he found his way into the waterways, and he was gone. Some people say he was seen. Some people say that he was caught again in the nets and he went to live with some of the fishermen in Watford. But all the local people agree that the very last time he was seen, he was stood tall on the end of the spit at Watford Ness. And he took one long look back towards the castle, and one long look out towards the horizon. And then he jumped, and he dived underneath the waves, never to be seen or heard from again. And there ends my tale. Thank you.
A brilliant evening.
Awesome. Have we got time for one more, or do we have to finish? I'm going to ask Julio. Speak to me. Is that yes? Another one? You guys want to?
I've got to thank you first for that, because I've never heard. That's a really difficult story to tell.
It took a while to get to that. You can imagine.
Because I've always sat inside the wild man's head, and you know, and all, and so, but you fleshed it out with all those other people.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
always,
Rob,
you know,
Suffolk, get them all.
it's always been an and then story, you know, in my head, because we've got that. There's
Yeah.
and because Orford Castle is really interesting.
Yeah.
It was built by Henry II, and it's the first castle in Britain that we actually know how much it cost, because he got
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. And the Oxford Dictionary will have it that the word Cockney comes from Tudor times, but in the local ballad of By God, which is he's a bit of a robber baron he ran East Anglia, and they refer, and it's a contemporary ballad, and it refers to Henry II as the King of the Cockney. So
Well, there you go.
well, there you go. So they
All
may
the good
call us
things.
silly in Suffolk, but we ain't that silly.
Yes, I'm silly. That's the truth. Would you like one
And
more
you can shut up, Maiden.
before we can send Charlie into chat? What do you reckon? Give me a thumbs up if that's a yes. Okay. So this last story is one of mine, and it's a story that I was commissioned to write last year by an amazing performance artist, goes by the name of Adalia Day, and they were making a project called Spectacular Spacebots, which is an autism appreciation project for kids. And he commissioned lots of different people to do kind of creative stuff in response to it. And this story was my response to it. Yeah, kind of probably you'll notice the similarities. I think often with stories that I feel are autist stories, there's always a lot of water and probably a few mermaids in there as well. So this is the premiere. It's the first time I've told live of the Mer Girl. Wish me luck on going in. Once upon a time there was a boy, and the boy had long, dark, wavy hair. And he lived with his mother on the edge of the village. And he went to the village school. And every day as he walked to school, the ground didn't feel quite right beneath his feet. But nonetheless, he went to his school, and every day when he sat in that chair behind his desk, it didn't feel like it quite fitted him, but nonetheless, he paid attention. And it wasn't long as he was listening that he would start to hear the whispers of the other children. He would start to hear the names that they were calling him. He would start to feel the tugs on his hair. He would start to feel the things hitting the back of his head, but he said nothing. He told the teacher before, and she had ignored him. Every day when he walked home, some of those children would follow him. So one day he thought, I'm going to take a different path. And instead of going home by the road, he walked along by the beach. And as he was walking along the sand, he saw something out to sea. A flash of red hair. And when he looked closer, it was a girl. A girl no older than himself. So surely she should be in school. And he waved. And she waved back. And then she giggled. She giggled the most beautiful sound. It was like a mountain stream. And he was about to call out to her. He was worried she was so far out to sea when suddenly he saw her jump and disappear under the waves with a flick of her iridescent tail. Mergirl! I saw a mergirl! He couldn't believe it. He went running back into the village, and the first person he saw was his teacher. He said, Teacher, I just saw a mergirl down on the beach. And the teacher said, Get away with me with your lies. You lied to me in school about these beautiful children being horrible to you, and now you're telling me this fancy. Leave me, boy. And the boy was taken aback, but he'd just seen a mergirl. And so he ran on, and he saw the miller just heaving sacks of flour from the mill, and he said, Miller, just on the beach, I just saw a mergirl. And the miller said, Can you not see I'm busy with work? Get away with you, I've no time for your fantasies. Grew a little inward, but no, I just saw a mergirl. He ran on, and he saw the church, and there was the preacher just coming out. I thought, if anyone knows of magical things, it's preachers. And he went to the preacher and said, Preacher, I just saw a mergirl down on the beach. And the preacher said, Mergirls are the devil's work, and if you have seen one, repent now. Get away from me, child. And the boy did nothing for it but to walk home. And when he got home, he sat down at his mother's kitchen table, and he said, Mother, I saw a mergirl. His mother said, That is wonderful, my child. Tell me all about her. And the boy told his mother all about the mergirl, and he went to sleep that night, happy. The next day he got up, he put his school clothes on, and he walked along that path that did not feel quite right beneath his feet. And he sat in that desk that still did not fit him very well. And still there was the whispering, and still the teasing, but somehow that day it mattered less. After school, he walked back to the beach. And this time he started to paddle through the surf. As he did so, as he was splashing, he looked out to sea and he saw her again. And she waved. And he waved. And then he began to run along the shore in the surf. And as he did so, she started to swim, racing him in the water. Both one running, one swimming, both parallel. And then they raced back again, and they raced back again. And they played and played until the dusk came. And then the boy went home. The next day, he awoke again. He walked that path to school. He sat in that desk that didn't fit, and at the end of the school, he went back to the beach. And this time, he rolled up his trousers, and he went into the water just up to his knees, standing in the shallows. He was about to step over, and he could see that the seabed for the cliff that fell down. And before he knew, the mergirl had come to shore. She in the rift below, he in the shallows. And she reached out her hand. And without thinking, he took it. And now, he ran in the shallows, and she swam just next to him, holding hands backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards until the dusk came and he went home. When he went home, he said to his mother, Mother, would you like to meet my new friend? His mother said, Of course I would. He said to Mother, Meet me after school at the beach tomorrow and you can see her. Sure enough, the next day, he walked past the school. He sat in the desk that didn't fit, and after school he went to the beach, and there was his mother waiting for him. And as they sat upon the shore and they looked out to sea, there she was again. And she waved, and she giggled, just like that mountain stream. And he stepped out into the surf and then into the shallows, and he looked back at his mother. He said, Mother, may I swim with her? His mother said, Of course. You are a strong swimmer. You will be fine, and if you need anything, I will be here to come for you. So he stood at the edge of the shallows before the cliff dropped down, and he put out his hand. And the mergirl came and grabbed his hand, and she pulled. And before he knew what he was doing, he was swimming along beside her, swimming further and further out to sea. And they had not gone very far when she dived beneath the water, holding his hand and pulling him down underneath. And he worried for a moment that would he be able to breathe, but then he saw the seaweed below him, colors he'd never seen before. He saw the silver fish going past, such a beautiful land that he didn't notice that he had no need to catch his breath or hold his breath. He could breathe under the water. She giggled, and he could still hear her under the water. And she swam on, and he followed her, and they swam on and on over seaweed of every color and shape and kind until there was a clearing in the seaweed, and there the boy saw the mer people. Not just one, not just a village of mer people, just going about their business the same as in his land. And he stared, and he looked down, and somehow enveloped by that water, he didn't feel like it didn't fit anymore. He began to smile. And as he watched, he could see the mer people going about their business. He could see that some of them had words, and he could hear, he could understand their words. And some of them, like his friend, had no words and no need of them. But still he could understand. The mergirl saw his smile, and she gestured to him to wait. And somehow, with no words, he understood. And he watched the people in wonder as she swam off back the way they'd came. He didn't know how long she had gone, but when he came back, she could see. He could see her coming towards him, but she wasn't alone. She had with her a mermaid, a woman. And as the mermaid came closer with the mergirl, the boy realized this was someone he knew. This was his mother. And his mother came closer and closer. He saw not only was she there under the water, but she had a fine, iridescent tail. And he embraced her. He said, "Mother, mother, why did you not tell me?" And she said, "I told you many times in stories, but you had to see it to believe." He said, "But mother, I have so many questions about these people and about how can I be underneath here?" And she said, "This is where you belong." And when he looked down, he saw that he too had a fine iridescent tail. They spent time that day with the mer people. And when they could see the dusk was coming from the water above, his mother said, "Child, we can stay here with these people, or we can return to the land. The choice is yours." They talked for a long time, and eventually the boy said, "Mother, I believe there are good people on the land. And maybe they would want to know about us. And maybe we could share things together. We should go back to the land." And the mother said, "As you wish." They swam all the way back to the shore, saying goodbye to their new friends, and as soon as their tails hit the sand in the shallows, they turned to legs. Legs that still did not feel quite right. No one knows quite what happened next. Some people say that the boy and his mother found enough good people on the land, and that they worked together. They made waterways from the sea so that the mer people could visit the land without harming themselves. They made fine contraptions so that the land people could visit the mer people without harming themselves. But some say the boy and the mother never found those people. And eventually they grew tired of being outcasts, and they left their life on the land, and they returned to the waters. And which of those is true for you? Only your heart can decide. For there ends my tale. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. That's his first outing, so lovely. So that is all my stories for this evening. But I'm really willing to kind of sit and have a chat if there's anything you want to ask. I'm also just going to stick my the link to my page if you want to chuck any money in my donations hat. If you go to that page, it's in the chat now, and I'll be very grateful. But anyone have any questions, any thoughts, any things you want to say after all of that? You don't have to.
So I missed the first bit because I couldn't get my audio working. But
Oh, bless you.
I know you've got a theme of several stories that have autistic people as a theme.
Yeah.
How did you get into that in the first place? What sort of led you into that?
So I'm autistic and all my children are autistic, and it's a really interesting thing because I mean I've worked with autists my entire life without realising. People went, "Oh, you're really good at that." It never occurred to me that was because I was autistic, and that's quite a common story I think for women who are kind of late diagnosed. But also for many of us as mothers, it's when our children are diagnosed that we kind of start understanding more about how autism presents for women, and you start going, "Oh, that's my life story." And it's really interesting. And I suppose I then kind of looked at some of the stories that had always intrigued me, and I thought actually they speak to that experience of being different but not knowing quite why. So I guess that's kind of, it comes from that personal experience, and it's a really interesting one that I say you kind of retrospectively look back and go, this all makes sense now, you know. And it's nice as well to kind of be able to explore it in story. I think I'm lucky. I've always used kind of creativity as a way to explore my life experience, and then kind of understanding that there are lots of other autists out there who have kind of trodden this path and can help you and have loads of kind of experience is just great as well. It's like finding a community. So, does that answer your question, Lisa?
Thank you.
Cool.
And Justine, how important is the archetypal images to as a hook for autists to get into? Because when I've worked with people on extreme, you know, like in centres adult, on the extreme end of the spectrum, they with just things like, you know, as long as if you had a witch or something in there, that would be a starting point. You know, like, so everyone will go, or all those sort of archetypal images, but is that a building block that people can go from?
Yeah, I think so. As autists, we respond to characters that are somewhat other than the norm. Do you know what I mean? And I think often when I've worked with kids who are autistic, they'll kind of respond to those kind of really strong images, and I guess that kind of that outsiderness. So stories of outsiders really kind of work. I mean, the first story that I told, Skeleton Woman, I worked with that story with a guy that was he was actually on remand for GBH. So I mean, seriously extreme. And he was amazing in the way that he responded to that. I think often you find that people have been stuck on the outside of things, think that maybe fairy tale type things are not for them, and you can find the stories that have the experience of difference, and they have actually kind of the violence that goes along with that. And if you can find that in a story, then they can respond to that, and it gives them a place to speak about things in a way that's kind of, story gives them a safe place to explore that, you know. So yeah, I think it is kind of really important to have those things that you can kind of anchor onto. So I've got like sunshine slightly on my face. Let's see if I can, probably can't. There we go. Does that answer your question, John?
It does. And I remember sort of how the guys, given that a lot of, sorry, my battery's about to go, and I'm trying to, when we were working in a prison together, how the guys responded to story, and really well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping, so when John and I worked in a prison earlier, it was the end of last year, wasn't it? And really interestingly for Mike and Lucy, so we created a story which with them, but they all had experience of Marrakesh, as had John. And in the story, we go to
Cafe Clock.
So and we'll go also to a really dodgy nightclub, which they've told me is really, really dodgy. So I am hoping at some point to kind of. Well,
Sarah will tell us the name of that club. What's the name, Sarah?
I know nothing about dodgy nightclub, John. How dare you?
No, but you've been told about it.
Is it the 555?
It's the one with 5 in. It's got 5 in there.
555, yes.
Yeah, it's very bad.
Yeah.
Lucy and I never go there ever. It's very bad.
I'll put that out. So I'm hoping at some point that we can retell that story on here, because it'd be lovely to have that connection.
We did that in Justine. It was one of Justine's extreme storytellings. And
and when you get into Deaths and Prisoners, they are not quite as clean as the ones you gave me. As you can imagine. But that's the joy of it. I think for the people that are kind of incarcerated, they have so little freedom that actually, if in extreme storytelling you just say yes to whatever's given to you, there's a real freedom and a real kind of, you know, that I think that really supports them to have that, just people going, yes, whatever you say is right. And obviously it does lead you to some really dodgy places, but it kind of releases their creativity, which feels like a really important thing to be able to do while they're in that place, you know.
But it was ironic because it's that in the thing that had been stolen or the character was looking for was time. So
yeah,
of course, as soon as they'd been to the dodgy nightclub, and as soon as I mentioned that Cafe Clock existed, that fitted totally into the time theme.
It was like it was.
It was just one, you know, it was just one of those fantastic moments. Excuse me.
But you know what, though? I think magic happens in prison storytelling. I'll just so when John and I finished our last storytelling at a women's prison, and John had told his story, the Ribbon Maiden, which is who creates a rainbow, and we walked out, and I swear, not a word of a lie, we walked out after the last session of that thing, and we turned around the corner of the building, and there, on the day that John told the Maiden story, was a double rainbow. And all the women in the prison who were out were looking at it, and everyone's going, look at the rainbow. And that is how our prison storytelling project ended, as just the most beautiful thing.
Wow.
Magic happens when you make magic. Definitely. The world is one.
Yes.
Yeah. Something else.
Yeah, but Mike and Lucy, you've done all right on the magic front on all this. So you've done pretty well. And we got more coming up.
We have. So when's the next live storytelling?
No, well, I'm going to do a plug for the next 3 days while you're here, and while there are people I can't see. Tomorrow night at the same time, Giles Abbott is working with his friend James, who is an illustrator, and he's going to do instant drawings during the stories. And I think, wow. Mike, I think it's a Viking theme. I think, but it's and then on, so that's going to be fantastic, because that's a whole new departure for us.
And Giles is amazing. I mean, Giles's voice is like Baden's voice. You could listen to them say anything, quite frankly. Yeah. And they're both fine talent.
No, don't say that about Baden. I'm going to give him a plug in a minute. And
But that's the first of a series of Saturday evenings with Giles and his.
Yeah. It's going to go on every Saturday till they get fed up with each other.
Nice.
And then on Sunday is our next live session, and we've got Georgiana from Romania. There's I've been trying to squeeze Romania in for a little while. You know, I was going to get Yulia to tell the story, but you know, he's kind of shy. He likes
I'm boring.
Backstage. Yeah, wait till I get over there. You know, by the time I finish with him, he'll be out telling stories.
Wait for my beard to grow white.
And then on Monday,
put an unofficial one on. This is my beard.
On Monday, which is another new departure, which I'm really excited about, is our new magazine program, Connecting the World Through Stories, and that'll be a kind of omnibus. So we'll do a review, a quick review of the week and what's coming up, and then we'll have a theme. And this week, the first one we're going to start with is tricksters, and I'm doing tricksters from other parts, all sorts of parts of the world. So, Rick, have you got a trickster?
A trickster.
Trickster character.
Oh yes, I've been just talking with some of them, and they are controlling the mushrooms in.
No, a traditional one, like yeah. Have you got a Miko story in your head?
Miko story.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, some of them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I want to take these archetypal. So, Gail Ross is coming in with rabbit stories from our Cherokee tradition. And Baden I've kidnapped for an Nancy story. And
no,
gonna
say, Baden,
are you working, Baden? Are you not able to come? You're dropping me
I'll be there.
Okay, that's
fine.
I'll be there. And then we've got Amy Douglas with Jack stories. So, and we're exploring those characters.
Puka stories in there as well.
Pardon?
You need to get a Puka story in there, some Irish ones.
Yeah. There will.
I'll find one.
I might get in touch with Orla on that. Yeah.
Definitely.
So I'm trying to get hold of two, but it's going to be, and people can come in with, you know, because it's going to be open, sort of open. So I'll have some people already, you know, programmed in, like, because I wanted to give Baden, you know, because he's very shy, and so I wanted to push him in front of it, and then but everyone else can come in with different stuff, and there'll be a whole discussion on Trickster. That's yeah.
Isn't this on
great...
Sunday?
Pardon?
Monday.
That's Monday.
Isn't this on? It's on Monday. Oh, good.
That's Monday. Sunday is
Monday,
Georgina
okay.
from Romania. Tuesday will be another live session, but I'm not sure who yet.
My goodness, it is non-stop at the World Storytelling Cafe.
So it's going to be 4 from now till Tuesday night. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions. Fantastic, live and direct.
Do not move that dial, as they used to say.
Right, you can take the spotlight off me now.
Connect the World is it's going to be a regular Monday evening thing. So, with a slightly different theme. So that's going to be a lot of fun developing that over the next few weeks.
It's going to be great. It's going to be huge.
Brilliant.
Yay.
Cool.
So that's going to be fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's growing. The whole thing is growing all the time.
Yeah, and you can. And if people can't get there at that time, then they can always go on afterwards, because everything goes up on the site afterwards, isn't it?
Yeah,
so.
Everything's on catch up.
Yeah.
And I do recommend that everyone looks in and suggests that other people does this set on catch up, because Justine was a bit good tonight.
Thank you. I was in my comfort zone. All good. It's all good.
Quick question, Justine, because I'm still kind of terrified by the idea of going live. What's the key to it for you? What was the key to it?
I think for me, the reason I love doing it on Zoom is that I can see people's faces. So I'm very much a live performer. I really struggle kind of with pre-recorded stuff. So I think Zoom is just a really great format for that. So if you are telling live, I would say stick yourself on gallery view so that you can see everybody. Julia's done amazing jobs of like kind of turning off mics when people are getting now, but leaving them on there so you could see the audience responses. But I think if you get really comfortable with Zoom, you almost kind of forget that you're not in the room with people. And I'm lucky that I do a lot of stuff on Zoom. So I do telling and I do music, I host music things, and I teach improvisation as well. So it feels kind of like, it feels quite normal to me. So I think actually what I'd say my biggest top tip is do a lot of Zoom so you're used to it. I think that's kind of, so that it becomes quite familiar to you. And really just talk to people like they're there. It's the same as not thinking of it as anything different to any other live kind of format. It'll be interesting for me with this, seeing it kind of played back on YouTube, because I'm not sure what it's like when it's kind of not live, because I'm used to just responding to what's going on there. But it was great. It was all right.
It was all right.
It's all right.
It was all right.
It's all right. Yeah, it's I do it because it is. I feel like it's really important in a world where we can't physically connect to find those ways to use the amazing technology we have to like virtually connect. And story does that. You can still be eye to eye, heart to heart with people, and that feels really important. I feel like stories are needed so much at this time. It's how we kind of find. There's something about stories that's a safe expression of difficult things. You know, it's kind of why they live in these archetypal words. So
we've definitely found that. Absolutely. I think the way that the whole project is sort of resonating
yeah, definitely. It's definitely a really kind of necessary thing for us.
Yeah, Baden, in answer to your question, I know live you've been put in some very dodgy circumstances, usually by me or Justine, and you know, not necessarily with storytelling audiences and stuff. And you always step up to the plate. You always blow it away. So just imagine that we're at a festival and I'm just throwing you in front of a lot of rowdy teenagers or something, and say, you know, like now handle it, Baden, and you know, as always, you will.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, and just I suppose there's another thing about performing live is make sure that you're kind of right in the middle of your frame. So if you kind of know where your frame is, which I guess is one thing that's different to kind of telling to live. So know where your frame is, put yourself in the middle of it, and know how far back you can go and still be seen, and know when your hands are in shot. So if you look back on some of my stories, you'll see me doing this, and I'm very consciously knowing where the edge of my frame is and knowing where it comes from the shot. So to have a really good play with that so that you can see, because it's quite fun. You can do things like this in Zoom that you kind of like you can't do when you're live. You know, you can do like really extreme close-ups and like pull back, and it's quite fun to just play with the format, you know. And so I'd say have a play with that and see what you can add to your stories, because some of the tellers that I really like on the cafe are people that kind of almost tell differently because the camera is there, so they're kind of really using the form.
They're working the yeah.
And that's a really good thing to kind of learn to do. It's a really great skill to have. I feel like I learned TV acting a couple of decades ago when I was in drama school, and suddenly all the things that I learned then are going, oh, I need to use that now.
They've come
quite
back.
interesting. Yeah. Work your shot, darling.
Is that when you lost your bit of Suffolk when you were
Well,
at
I've just
drama
got.
school?
Yeah. Well, they taught me not to be Suffolk anymore. Although, strangely enough, I have to say, I got into drama school using a speech from the end of Arnold Wesker's Roots, which is a Norfolk girl. So I don't know why they got me to get rid of the accent, because it got me in there in the first place.
That's what got you there.
It's very specific, that accent. When Roots was on at Ipswich Arts Theatre back in the early 70s, they sent and there was still people speaking like that up round this area. They sent the actors up to stay a few days around there so they could get the accent exactly right.
Oh, it's a beautiful speech. If you've got some time left, and if anyone wants to do it like a live poetry, the final speech from Arnold Wesker's Roots is amazing. It's just, and as a kind of country girl who kind of like, you know, went and did things outside, it's still kind of 25 years on, still speaks to me. So so go and read that before I tell the Wild Man of Watford again.
Oh no.
Does anyone have any more questions? Anything else you want to say or ask of me or John or any other tellers or Mike while he's here?
I know nothing.
We just need to say, I think we need to say thank you. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I think
very welcome.
Thank you for a really good night.
Thank you.
We've all been out tonight.
Just wait for 1 minute.
Proper knees up.
Thank you so much for coming. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, and go and find my page and stick some money in my hat. That would be great. And I shall be back again at some point. I've now promised you the story with the clock cafe in it from the prison, haven't I? So I'm going to work that up so you can have that, because that would be really lovely. Yeah, definitely.
I'd like to hear the one about the rainbow as well.
Oh, the Ribbon Maiden. Yeah.
I think that's on one of my early sets. When I'm sitting in the dark because we couldn't get enough light in the room.
So we'll get John to do a better version of it for you, Liz, so you can actually see him in here.
It was great to hear the same story by a new teller too.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm actually working on that, because there's a guy called Richard Beard from Brighton, and he took the story from me and improved it enormously, and but it's his wife's favourite story, so I've invited him to do a set, but I'll ask him to put the Ribbon Maiden in for to that, and that, because it's kind of nice to. I listened to him telling it today, and it was great, and you know, I'll have to stop telling it.
No, you'll never stop telling the Ribbon. Isn't it one of your kids' favourite stories as well, John?
Oh, yeah, Fiona's.
I'll be with I'm back.
Yeah.
Gonna say, I knew it was some relative.
I think it was the early bit, because I got told that I fluffed it a bit somewhere when I was doing it, because I always work like I'm live, because I go straight into I give usually a bit of a nightmare time every Saturday. So he's going to be really relieved that I'm not doing my Sunday set anymore.
You can relax, Julio.
But you know, I did the Ribbon Maiden, and then Fiona spoke to me on the phone and said, "I can't believe you mucked that up."
Oh dear. Yeah. We should have a storytelling kids sessions. Get Fiona to tell something and get Sam to tell something as well, because that would be something.
Some people are shy. Some people want to sit behind the scenes. and some people like to be up front.
And some people just can't shut up, can you, John? Oh dear.
Guys, well,
So we call that a night then, ladies and gentlemen.
Fantastic.
Well,
Big round of applause for Justine.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of
you,
the episode.
Justine.
You're really welcome. See you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin.